Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews and welcome back to the Saw Retrospective Reviews. With this one talking about Saw 3D, Saw 7, Saw the Final Chapter, whatever you want to call it, but the end of the original Saw movies before the next two that we'll discuss, and we have a lot of things to discuss when it comes to those. But without further ado, let's just get straight into it here. So this concludes the long-running yearly movie that was coming out, because these Saw movies came out every single year from 2004 and onwards up until 2010. I believe this movie came out. So I'll be honest, like I said in the previous one, Saw 6 was an improvement from Saw 5, and with Saw 7, in terms of the traps, a lot more better than the previous one. But when it comes to storyline, I like how everything was sewing in nicely, but there was some problems with it, which we'll speak about. So if you are new to the channel, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button, doing the usual YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and also keep an eye out on the channel because we are doing tier ranking videos for all the Saw movies, with sawx coming out at the time of this recording later on this week. So definitely consider subscribing so that you're not missing out on that tier ranking video. When it comes to this one, so the opening sequence before the opening kill, you've got a little bit of flashbacks when it comes to Dr. Gordon. So Dr. Gordon from the first movie, after he escaped, after he sawed off his foot and manages to escape like inside the tunnel, we sort of get a little flashbacks of what happened to him and what he's been up to like minutes after escaping. So we get little flashbacks of that. But then we get to like a more modern Saw game because it's out in public. They're in this shop. I think it was like a shop or something, but it's like there's glass window in front of everybody there. So you've got two guys across the room from one another, chained up with this saw in the middle, and then you've got this girl hanging above. This girl has apparently been cheating on these two, saying that she loves one versus the other, all that kind of like love triangle drama. Essentially the aim of the game is the two guys, you push the contraption machine thingy so that the saw will cut up the other guy, so one person has to die. So either one guy is going to die or the other guy is going to die by them pushing it, or they just leave it the way it is and then the saw just cuts up the girl. So the two guys start fighting with one another at first, then they realize that the girl is just lying to them, cheating on them, doing everything she can to save herself. So they end up working together and killing the girl off in front of all these people who, as usual, get their phone out and start recording. And bear in mind too, this was in 2010, so YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, all of that kind of stuff wasn't invented yet. The usual trend is take out your phone, record, see what happens rather than trying to help. So this was the opening sequence of Saw 7, the final chapter. Okay, so again, as per usual, Saw game is being played, main characters, other storyline going on here. So first off, we'll start off with the guy, which one thing I really like about this is because you've got this guy who has this team of people, his best friend, his wife, publicist, all of these people. He actually wrote a book of escaping Jigsaw, of saving himself from the traps, which we come to find out never happened. But my favorite part about this is that we get flashback sequences and we get the most epic scene you'll ever see in a Saw movie with tobinbell johnkramer wearing a hat trying to look young and hip. It really does remind me of this meme.
How do you do, fellow kids?
But because this guy was taken advantage and got rich by lying about being in a saw trap, he ends up actually being in a saw trap along with everybody else from his team. Because there was even one point where there was this therapy group session with all these previous victims. This one lady, the one that chopped her own arm off, in there complaining about everything. Then we even get like a little sequence of Dr. Gordon there. He really is trying to like put this persona in place. So he ends up getting drugged up, he wakes up. So his first test essentially is just him trapped in the cage where he has to, there's like a bed of nails. He has to escape from the cage and try not to fall on the bed of nails, which pretty much is easy. You just swing yourself, fall and fly like some superhero, just fly off the cage, avoid the bed of nails. And then we move on to the second test where each room has one of the people from his team, from the book publicist team, in a trap that he has to try and help them escape. So the first one is the publicist, I believe it was. So she's sitting there, you've got these spikes, 4 spikes around her, and the key is inside her stomach. So he has to literally yank out the key from her using a rope. But the more she screams, the more that the spikes will dig into her throat and kill her. So you've got this like sequence of events where he's like pulling it, he's pulling the string. She's screaming. He's trying to shut her up. He manages to pull the key out of her, but because she's screaming so much, he is not able to like save her in time, and the spikes end up like stabbing her into the throat, into the neck, so she ends up being dead. So then he moves on to the next room, which is his lawyer. So she's strapped to this contraption here where she's sort of like laying down, and then she ends up moving slowly and slowly because there's got these 3 spikes, both going into like her 2 eyes and then one going into her mouth to kill her. So in order for him to stop here, he's using this gym machine thingy, which you can see how much I go to the gym by not knowing like the name or anything like that with it. So that equipment thingy that you have to pull on with the weights and stuff like that. So I believe he has to like pull it, but he pulls it and there's spikes digging into his rib cage or the sides of it. So he has to like hold on. He tries to do it. It stops the machine working. But because he can't hold on for so long because of the spikes, he ends up letting go. He does it a couple of times, but it's still not enough. When the timer runs out, he's not able to do it. And so that machine squishes into her face. The spikes go inside her mouth and her eyes. And it was just like a gruesome sequence there. But so that's another one down in the dust. And then you get to the next room with his friend who's just freaking out. So they're on this like upper level. You've got planks and everything on there. And the guy, his best friend, is like blind, so if he has to help him walk across so they can try and get the key, he ends up trying to help him slightly. He goes across the planks and everything, grabs the key, and does the most dumbest move I've ever seen a player from Jigsaw do. He goes and throws the key to somebody that's blindfolded, thinking that they're gonna catch it. So he throws the key, the guy has no idea, it hits his chest, and the key ends up falling onto the lower level. So then he ends up being hung because he's not able to save himself. So like with the previous 2, I honestly don't blame him for their deaths. But with this one, I mean, it's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen there. So then he moves on to the final test, the final room there. Before he enters the room, he's in this previous room because the wife, who honestly had no idea that he lied about all of this, she's on this platform with like this chain around her neck. So every time he completes a challenge or fails a challenge, the chain is like pulling her neck. But before he's able to see her, he's in this room. He has to pull out his teeth in order to get the numbers for the combination. So he ends up doing that, finds the combination, goes into the room where the wife is in. And so his test is that he has to put these hooks in his chest, which he claims that is what happened to him, so he was able to escape. That's where he got his fame and fortune from. So he ends up having to do that. So the test is that he has to plug in these 2 outlets that are hanging up on the ceiling. So he has to plug them in because there's this like electricity cage fence around his wife on her platform. So he has to hook in these chains, climb up. He grabs the 2 outlets, but before he's able to hook them, the chains rip off from his chest. He ends up falling to the floor. The timer runs out, and then she does this thing that you'll see on a Power Ranger episode where like she's on this platform and this whole furnace just goes into her, and she's stuck inside this furnace and gets burnt alive, which honestly I felt so bad for because she had no idea what was going on, but she's getting like the full force, full brunt of it, being burnt alive. Worst way to go, and all because he just lied to her. So I just felt really bad and felt like that was an undeserved death, but all of this because he lied. With this one, it's a lot better than the previous movie because the tests and the traps and stuff were a lot more entertaining and a lot more better and more gorier than the previous movie, because like I said, in the previous one you've got like these rope thingies that he has to pull, you've got things where you're not breathing, or things where you have to like guide somebody else. Not as interesting as this one. So this one was a lot more fun and entertaining when it comes to the traps. But with this one, because of all of this, he failed every single test. Every single person in his team ends up dying. So then now we move on to the main characters that we have been following, because we continue the events from the previous movie. So Jill sees that Hoffman pushes his face into the glass and ends up surviving. And I'll be completely honest with Jill, she is the slowest runner I have ever seen in my life. Like, you've got this person chasing after you and you're pretty much jogging and just running at such a slow pace. It was so frustrating to watch her run, but she's trying to run, and like, you've got this chase sequence. He ends up stitching himself and trying to find Jill, but he's not able to find her. And so before we move on to what happens next, you get this so you get another like trap jigsaw game that's being played. So you've got this person who's pretty much super glued in the car, topless, super glued to the back of the chair. You've got this lady at the bottom of the car. So they're in a garage. The car is floating in that contraption that you have in like these auto mechanic shops. The lady is at the bottom underneath the car. You've got one guy stuck to the garage and then another guy who's like arms are wheeled, chained up into the car. So they're considered racist and like taking advantage of people, so they're being tested here. And so the test is that the guy that's super glued to the chair, he has to pull this lever in order for all the games to stop. So by doing that, he has to pull his skin and everything, and it was just a really gore fest, but such a clever way. And I really give praise for this trap, because obviously he's not able to do it. The timer runs out before he's able to pull the lever, so he's getting peeled off. The car ends up falling and crushes the girl that's at the bottom. The car starts driving off, pulling the guy who's behind the car chained. His arms get pulled off. The car ends up driving into the garage, killing the guy that's stuck on the garage, crashing into another car outside. So the guy that's super glued ends up flying out of the windshield into another car. And that really was such a clever way to go, and such a clever trap contraption thingy. So I have high praise for that one. Okay, so then Jill, when she does escape, she ends up going to the internal affair people, I believe it was. So you get introduced to the detective of the movie, Gibson, I believe his name was. And so they decide that they're going to put her in a safe house, because she revealed that Hoffman is the one that was part of the jigsaw traps and is the next apprentice. So they put her in the safe house, where Hoffman ends up sending a video claiming that he'll continue the games unless they give up Jill. So then as the movie is progressing, similar to Saw 5, you've got this little bit of cat and mouse game. So Gibson ends up going to the scene of the crime where the garage took place and everything like that, sees this back door with this mirror in there. They go around different locations looking for clues, only to go back to the original scene of the crime there, because Gibson realizes that they need to go behind the mirror. He ends up going behind the mirror. He ends up seeing that the person whose arms got ripped off was actually sitting in that chair. So there's like a dead body sitting in the chair. So the person that they bagged up earlier turned out to actually be Hoffman. So he was playing mind games. He was there all along. He ends up being in a body bag going back to the police station, because that's where Jill is. After Hoffman sends the original video, they move Jill to the police station, so that's where she is. So then, because this dead body is in there, you have this thing that you'll see from a mafia movie, like this machine gun appears and just shoots all the police officers, also killing off Gibson too. So Gibson's dead, these police officers are dead, Hoffman's on his way to the police station where Jill is, and then you get this really nice sequence of events with the third act. Hoffman just going like full Terminator on everybody, just going and killing every single person. This coroner ends up unzipping the bag with the body, turns out to be Hoffman. Hoffman stabs him in the throat, goes and kills another officer, ends up shooting the officer that was looking after Jill right in the eye, and goes to try and kill Jill. She ends up stabbing him with a pen or something in his neck, and again, with the slowest run I've ever seen in my life, you're having this chase sequence inside a police station with Jill running at like 2 miles per hour, Hoffman going after her. They go into the room, they have like this little back and forth tussle, which Hoffman's easily able to overpower her and ends up putting her in the chair, similar to the situation of the end of the previous movie. He straps her into the chair, puts her in the bear trap claw thingy on her head, and ends up killing Jill. So just a gruesome way to go out. And he goes to his warehouse where he burns all the evidence, burns everything, so essentially ending this jigsaw reign of his, only to be met by 3 pigs, where one pig is actually turns out to be Dr. Gordon. So you've got this little like twist and turns, a sequence of events with Dr. Gordon has been another apprentice of John Kramer. We see flashbacks of him, he's the one helping John Kramer with other sword traps, so another apprentice. And Dr. Gordon ends up putting Hoffman in the bathroom for the first movie, chaining his legs. He throws the saw out of the room so that he can't saw his leg off. No way for him to escape, basically. And so Hoffman is trapped in this bathroom. So everything just goes full circle with Dr. Gordon leaving Hoffman inside this bathroom to basically be killed off, wrapping up the whole Saw movies from Saw 1 to Saw 7 in like a nice little bow. Hoffman is essentially dead. Dr. Gordon's walking out of that bathroom, I don't know, maybe years after the events of the first movie. So just a nice way to just close everything, tie up all these loose threads, ending this movie and ending this Saw franchise before we move on to like the reboot and whatever you want to call them for the next movies. But when it comes to this movie, I'll be honest, it really was a fun, enjoyable ride with this movie, with the traps that were taking place, with the other characters, with the twists and turns. Hoffman, again, another great standout performance with him in this movie, with that third act, going to full Terminator, killing off people one by one in the police station. But there are some flaws when it comes to this. Like, again, we have another apprentice, another flashback of Johnkramer teaching somebody and picking up the dirty work. I felt like it was just too much when it comes to like another apprentice. That's my fear for the sawx movie, is that Johnkramer gets another apprentice that was part of the movie. I like the way everything was just wrapped up and tied up nicely, but there were some issues when it comes to that. And also, again, like this whole cat and mouse game that they were playing with the detective and Hoffman, I felt like could have just been a little bit shorter. There wasn't a lot of like twists and turns and surprises. I like the twist of how Hoffman was able to get into the police station, but just not enough surprises or events like that when you've got like the big twists and turns and the reveals in the first couple of movies, versus these ones weren't as shocking or unpredictable as they could have been, but still a fun, entertaining movie nonetheless, and just a great way to end the final chapter of Saw. So if you have seen the movie, let me know in the comment section down below. Were you a fan of this movie? Did you enjoy the ending? Did you like the way everything was wrapped up? Please let me know in the comment section down below. But that about wraps it up for this movie, and again, the final chapter of the Saw movies. We'll be talking about Jigsaw 2017 and the Spiral movie in the next couple of days, so definitely keep an eye out on the channel, subscribe so you're not missing out on that. But thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening. This was Mikey Reviews. Peace.